Doom v. Vamos v. Vamos, Epicureans. This is the BCE Comics Pod one-shot edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
I'm doing well, particularly since we are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and we are starting a new volume today. All right, this is Volume 11, Lifedeath. Now, Stojr, I don't get to share my volume. I pre-ordered mine, and my pre-order has not arrived yet. So I've had to rely on the digital version that I've acquired for our podcast to kind of get us caught up here. But I'm hoping to be able to pick up a actual physical version or have mine arrive sometime soon. So you're leading us off here. What is in this volume?
Right, well, we're at volume 11 of the Epic Collections called Lifedeath. This is 1983 to 1985, covering issues 176 to 188, as well as the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine miniseries 1 through 6, and material from Marvel Fanfare number 40. The blurb on the back, talking about the contents, because I was too worried about spoiling things without reading this. John Romita Jr. joins Chris Claremont as the X-Men's chart-topping adventures continue. Drama abounds as Cyclops honeymoons with Madeline Pryor. Wolverine's relationship with Mariko takes a turn for the worse, and Kitty Pryde is kidnapped and forced to marry the Morlock Caliban. Meanwhile, Rogue is public enemy number one, and anti-mutant his sentiment threatens the passage of a law that will strip every mutant in the United States of their rights. There's no shortage of action either. Colossus battles Juggernaut, Mystique and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants return, and Rachel Summers arrives on the scene. And in a miniseries with major implications for both characters, Wolverine and Kitty Pryde head to Japan and go to war with the Yakuza. Plus, Chris Claremont and Barry Windsor Smith's stunning Lifedeath. I mean, this, if you've followed the X-Men cartoon, this is the Lifedeath storyline was one of the episodes in X-Men 97 this year. So you'll see some parallels there. If you've watched any of the X-Men movies, but specifically the first movie where they're talking about passing legislation and the Mutant Legislation Act or whatever it's called. This is where they get more serious about that stuff in here. There's a lot more people are maturing in here. I think that's what they're alluding to with Kitty and Wolverine. That's a miniseries I've never read, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. I kind of knew who the villain was, but I never saw it, never read it before. But there's a lot to take in this volume. It's going to be an interesting one. I don't know that it'll get to the heights of the 9.5 that we collectively rated in the last one, but it's going to get a pretty good rating, I think. But we'll see. We got to read through the issues first.
Yep. Well, and the people have commented that the timing of this reading club has hit just right for us to get to this volume just as it came out. And unfortunately, that backfired on me because my pre-order's not here yet. But that's okay. We're getting into it anyway. All right, so today's issue, this is number 176, Decisions, and we've got a new volume, so let's go over the creative team. This is written by Chris Claremont, pencils by John Romita Jr., inks by Bob Vychek, and I think that's it. All right, so an aptly titled issue, Decisions. Scott and Madeline are flying into the Pacific for their honeymoon and trying to decide whether to join Corsair and the Starjammers or not, all while fighting the weather and also fighting a giant squid, as you do. Mariko and Wolverine continue their arguments over worthiness, and Mariko has convinced Wolverine that she must be the one to get the clan Yashida out from its ties from the Yakuza. Peter Henry Gyrick also joins a government meeting where there's a decision on how to use mutants for the government's purposes, and Caliban of the Morlocks has to face the consequences of his decision to betray the Morlocks to win the favor of Kitty Pryde. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts on this issue?
I mean, my first comment is how cool that cover looks. I mean, you got Cyclops being drugged underwater. You got the X-Men logo being destroyed. I just love that. It's John Romita Jr. just kind of taking over, making his mark on the book right from his first full issue. And big fan of this issue. There's a lot in this volume that I didn't have in any sort of collected edition before, but this issue was covered in that other volume that I had. So that sort of From the Ashes volume would end with this issue. So mapping obviously was a bit different. So I've read this one before. I think this is a lot of fun. I think it's nice to see them on their honeymoon. Once again, never get on a plane with the X-Men. It's almost always going to crash. Some ridiculousness here. You get a giant shark, you get a giant squid, all looking really cool. And I think there's a lot of chess pieces that are moved into place here. And if you know anything about the low 200 issues of X-Men or the early, this era, pre Outback era of X-Men, you'll start to get a sense of like what the government's setting up, what's going to happen with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So it's nice to see these kind of chess pieces get moved into place for things that I never really noticed before, before doing this kind of full read through. I really enjoyed this issue. I think the art's on point. I think there's a simple story here that you can remember. They fight a squid, but there's a little bit more meat when you dig a little deeper. What did you think?
I find it interesting that you talk about this one as moving chess pieces, because it did seem to me that we're juggling some subplots and introducing new subplots, but otherwise there's not a whole lot of X-Men in this issue, right? You get Cyclops and Wolverine, but otherwise it's just kind of setting other things up, which is fine. It was still an enjoyable issue, but that's something that just kind of stood out to me. Also, we talked previously about how the effect inkers have had on John Romita Jr.'s art and how it can sometimes be hard to pick out his style early in his career. And I noted one thing while reading this. If we look at page 19, let me get the comic viewer up here. But of course I have to actually go to page 19 now instead of just being on the cover here, so give me a moment. The one thing that kind of stood out to me, where I could tell I was looking at John Romita Jr.'s art, is if you see Callisto in that first panel there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's her eyes, or I don't know how I can tell that that's just JRJR's style, but that just tells me right there that that's him. I always thought his style looked kind of boxier cubist, and I'm not sure that's really the case with Calypso here. Maybe it's just because this is similar to how he draws Aunt May or something, and I'm more familiar with his Spider-Man stuff. I don't know, but that was like the one thing where I was like, okay, I'm in familiar ground here.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to talk a little bit more about that in the next issue, where his dad does the inks, and it's noticeably different, but still the same. So yeah, but I would agree with you, because if you go, if you flip back and look at the sort of politics pages, right? So on pages, what is that, 20 or something, or 13 and
13?
13 and 14, 15, somewhere in that neighborhood, right?
Okay.
Like, these guys have much more of that sort of typical kind of squared off, boxy face to them, but Callisto looks very different, right? And is this, did I miss something? Is this the first introduction of Val Cooper? Is this the first time we've met her?
I'm not sure. I thought the name Val Cooper sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. So it's been a while since I've read these things.
I think I'm pretty sure that that's the first introduction of Val Cooper, and Val Cooper will play, a big role in X Factor in the '90s and things like that. So, she's another one of those sort of, humans that have interaction with X people, so to speak, and is a recurring character similar to Moira.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to see where that ends up going. All right, so is there any other final thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward to the next issue, because it's really like new ground for me. Like the next issue kicks off some things that I hadn't, read a lot of or ever before. So I'm looking forward to going through them.
Oh, okay, awesome. I didn't know we were getting into new territory for you. All right, great.
Yeah,
Well,
there's some gaps in my knowledge there. So
yeah, I've read these things before in the Essentials when those came out, and I'm not sure exactly how far up I got in the Essentials volumes. I'd have to. I kept a record. I'd have to look it up, but I don't remember off the top of my head. And that was also darn near 20 years ago. So I, my memory's not what it once was. Getting to be old. All right, so if you guys enjoyed our thoughts, again, follow us on YouTube. We're going to read, rate, and review a full Big Epic Collection, a full Big Collected Edition, once a month. We're also going to have these daily one-shots. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.